Okay, thank you, Abigail, for that introduction. Um, as you know, my name is Jason Wagner, and I'll be presenting on the Octagon of Life, mental health care for students and teachers. So our agenda today is I'm going to explain what bipolar 1 disorder looks like. I'm going to explain my story and how it relates to that, and then some strategies for teachers and students afterwards. And then lastly, some questions and answers. So my goals of this presentation are for you to understand the signs of bipolar 1 disorder, to understand a holistic approach to recovery, and to have strategies for yourself and for students. So firstly, what is bipolar 1 disorder? Well, it's the unusual shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, concentration, and the ability to carry out day-to-day tasks. Its moods range from extremely elevated and up, known as manic episodes, which I'll go in depth on, to very sad and down, known as depressive episodes, which I'll also highlight. Bipolar 1 is defined as having a severe manic episode with symptoms that include rapid thinking, pressured speech, insomnia, increased energy, grandiose ideas, excessive spending, and substance abuse, all of which I had as a person with bipolar 1 disorder, and I'll highlight those as well. Now, bipolar 2, which you may have heard of, is defined as a pattern of depressive and hypomanic symptoms without a full-blown manic episode. So the key distinction there is the manic episode. Bipolar 2 is not typically treated with hospitalization because it doesn't have the severe manic episode, but bipolar 1 usually requires hospitalization. So before I was manic, which I'll highlight, I was hypomanic. And what hypomania is essentially the mass symptoms of bipolar disorder. I was taking 5 classes, going to 2 jobs, playing hockey intramurals late at night, and fundraising $5,000 for a trip to Africa. I was doing all of this within a span of a few semesters. So I was taking 5 courses and doing them well and working 20 plus hours at work. And I was fundraising for this trip to go to Africa. And I also had a concussion from falling off a mountain. So I was hiking with some friends, and we were got to the top of a mountain out in Crow's Nest Pass, and I slipped on the rock slide. I hit some rock slide on my way down and hit my head and had a concussion. And to self-medicate, I was smoking marijuana, and I was also doing marijuana throughout as I was starting to get into that area of life. And another thing I was experimenting with during this time was psychedelic drugs. In December, so my trip to Africa was in the summer of 2017, and that December of 2016, I took psilocybin or magic mushrooms for the first and only time. And it was a real glimpse into what mania would be. It supercharged my mind and made me hyper energetic. And then fast forward to July 1st, 2017, I took LSD or acid, a very severe psychedelic drug, which we think in hindsight potentially was one of the main triggers of my manic episode, in addition to marijuana smoking. So the hypomanic stage was really just being supercharged and efficient and masking my illness very well. But it was after that day I took LSD that I was starting to really show signs of mania. So part of my mania was while I was in Africa. I was starting to show signs before my trip to Africa, but it was really that week after, 10 days after I took LSD, that I went to Africa and was in a full-blown manic episode. It was a combination of being away from home, being stressed in a new environment. I was on a leadership conference, essentially. I was a Leaders in Training International with the WE organization. I had traveled with them previously to Ecuador on a free trip from the teacher one. And while in Africa, I was there to build a school, but I was also the oldest participant on the trip and was looked at as a leader. And it stressed me out because I thought I was like on a job interview in a sense. While I was in Africa, I took 300 pages of notes and had over 2 hours of audio journals. This is in a span of 16 days. It was not unusual for me to be up for 20 plus hours during this period, as I would have late nights where I would sneak out of my tent and stargaze under the Tanzanian sky. My time in Africa can be characterized as chaotic in the sense that I was displaying all signs of the mania. I was thinking rapidly. I had fast and pressured sleep. I was insomniac. As I mentioned, I was sleeping for maybe 4 to 6 hours a night at most. I was very antagonistic and obstinate. Like I got into many arguments with folks. I was stressed. I had grandiose thoughts in the sense that I had so many goals. I had to have 300 pages of notes to keep track of them all. I wanted to start the Wagner Ways Corporation, the Wagner Ways podcast. I wanted to write a novel. I wanted to create 2 charities. I was going to get 2 PhDs and become a teacher, as well as a world-class musician and produce Pink Floyd concerts in Tanzania, all within a decade, or what I calculated out to be 57,675 hours. When I got home from Africa, my parents instantly knew something was wrong. During my ride home from the airport, from the Calgary airport to Lethbridge, it was me talking for 2 hours straight and just like a mile a minute. And they were concerned, and rightfully so. This is a photo of me during my manic episode, 2 photos actually. And as I said, my manic episodes were characterized by rapid thinking, pressured speech, insomnia, increased energy, grandiose ideas, excessive spending, and substance abuse. So while I was home from Africa, I moved out of my parents' place in a matter of 2 days, journaled and audio recorded constantly. I was fired from both jobs, and rightfully so. I was antagonistic at work with both chefs at my catering job and with customers at my bartending job at the campus pub. And manic spending was characterized by me buying a $3,000 stereo that I didn't need, a $1,500 computer I didn't need, and paying for all of my rent upfront, 3 months plus a damage deposit. So I spent nearly $8,000 to $10,000 in the span of like 2 weeks, and that was drained all of my savings and went into debt a little bit. I also almost got lost in a border town, and thankfully was found by a friend while I was wandering aimlessly while I went to go pick up that stereo that I mentioned. And I was also making social media posts constantly. I was tweeting, I was Facebook posting, I was Instagram direct messaging. I was doing it all because I couldn't keep the thoughts in my head. I had to externalize that information because it was just too much. I do have a treat for you. It's one thing for me to talk about these symptoms, but it's another thing for you to see them. So the following is a video of me during my manic episode where I think you can really see the grandiose ideas and the rapid thinking.
Haley, I'm not joking. Is there anybody in there? Hello. I've been a spy the whole time. I've been a sneaky actor The entire time. I found the keys to the kingdom and I made you a video just for you. I found it. Let me share it before the devil takes it away. That's why I'm wearing glasses. I'm scared. I'm the chosen one. Or am I? Am I just qualifying you right now? So pick up the phone. Seriously. Why are you still watching this video? Close it at any time. I'm just playing right now. Literally making my point. Turn off the video. Or enjoy it, because I'm being silly and I haven't talked to you in a while. And you're the only person that I spoke to today, because I'm taking a secret bow of silence. And I want all the drama dudes and all the drama drools to see that I've been on your team the whole time, you dumbasses.
So who is Haley? Haley was a girl I went to high school with that I thought was bullied. She was a drama kid. And this vow of silence I was talking about, I will go back a slide to this. So I was taking a vow of silence because I was talking too much and nobody was listening. So I thought if I took a vow of silence and just wrote everything, that people would follow me and I'd gain this massive following, like a Terry Fox run, but me running without my mouth, basically. And you can see that I would write on myself hashtags and just nonsense, and I would strike my leg with a pen every time I spoke. You can see I've got many strikes. And to say people were concerned would be an understatement. This is a text that I sent a teacher. His name was Jared. He was my biology teacher in high school, and he was a very concerned teacher. He called me during my vow of silence because he was very concerned about my well-being and was just confused about all my posts and Snapchats and all of that, or tweets and all and everything. And I would send him 499 texts in the span of a few hours. So the blue is me, if you couldn't figure that out. So what do you want from us? Us, HM. HM would mean Hakuna Matata, but of course you wouldn't know that. Maybe Jared had enough ZZZs. Maybe he finally sees why he called. Maybe he realized that I wrote this letter before he tried to interrupt that Asperger kid. Sorry, I'm confident, you bully. I actually listened. I listened to it all. Now you're scared because a pill you created showed it to me easily. The pill being LSD. Now you realize why I use my phone tactically and strategically. Hashtag RW or Rebel Wags. And Jared said simply no, as in I don't understand what you're doing. I highlight Jared's story here because I terrorized him that day and said he didn't care about students like Haley or myself. I sent him 499 texts in a span of an hour, and he didn't know what was up. He was just reaching out. He was concerned, and I highlight him here because he got in contact with my parents, and they together kind of made a plan to give me some help because they were concerned. So he didn't know I was bipolar or anything, but he knew something was up. And I highlight him here because as teachers, we need to support our students in times of crisis, like a manic episode. Another teacher I'd like to highlight is Kevin. Kevin was my high school advisor and social studies teacher, and he also took me on a trip to Ecuador in 2015 after a trip he won to take 3 students to Ecuador. And as I'm highlighting here, this is August 29th, 2017, and he wanted to meet up to see how my trip to Africa was because it was a follow-up trip to the trip to Ecuador. And he wanted to meet up to see why I was so erratic in my posts and everything. And I stood him up. As you can see here, he's in the gray, I'm in the green. If it's not obvious, I'm on the patio. I've gone ahead and ordered as I need to be back at Winston Churchill by 1 p.m. All done, heading back to Winston Churchill. You okay? The silence is deafening. And I said, I am now up because I slept. Sorry for ghosting. I didn't hit the pillow until 4:30 in the morning. We have all the time in the world to speak. Give me another time, please. And he said, let me take a look at my week and I'll get back to you. And then I sent a super long text, which also said, I'm sorry for ditching you on lunch with no heads up. This whole concept of time and sleep and thought is so wild when you actually question everything and understand metaphysics. Have you ever looked into lucid dreaming and meditation, Kevin? I may be low on sleep. So I highlight Kevin here because he was trying to keep me grounded during this whole time, which was a very tough task. And I highlight him again because you may get stood up as a teacher. You may reach out and a student may not be there, but you have to keep trying and try to keep them grounded like Kevin did to me. And he also reached out to my folks, and with him and Jared and my parents, we were able to eventually get me help. But before we got help, I met another teacher, or talked to another teacher during this time, and this was Mr. B. So Mr. B was my grade 6 teacher, and I happened to run into him at while I was driving home one day because he was working at a school near me. And we met up for coffee at Tim Hortons there. And for 2+ hours, we spoke. And another treat for you folks is I've got an actual audio clip from that conversation because I recorded it at the time. And without Mr. B knowing it, he knows now, of course, and he has a copy of it, I believe. But I'd like to play a short 4-minute clip of me speaking so you can see how erratic and all over the place my thoughts were at this time. See how many topics you can count that I go through.
Like, what if I was my own government? What if I was my own president of my own country? And this is our model of the utopia that Marx was so close to achieving, that's been failed time and time again. But you know what? We made it work. It's not called communism. It's called something not Wagnerism, because that's super egotistical, but something better. Anyways, there's another parking lot idea. But let's stop talking about other ideas and get back to the one that you want to know right now in this moment.
You're referencing your boss.
Oh, yeah. So that's again, right, John. So perfect example of a greedy wedding. Yeah, I did get all the way back to that thought, so the brain can work. I'll show you how, Frankenstein. It's hilarious. Another parking lot.
Okay, wait, stop.
Stop.
How do you do this? How do you engage someone in a conversation at the exact same time you're extremely observant on someone's body language? That's a gift.
No, it's not a gift. It's a learnable skill that I'll package to you to make it super simple. Because I've been doing this since 10th grade and I didn't realize it. I read in Tony Robbins' book, because Tony Robbins is a great resource. Guess what? Perceptions change, people change. It is absurd to think that he is some loser, infomercial, weirdo, I'll solve all your problems, and I'll solve them right now, just like Slapchop solved all your problems. People still think that Tony's a Slapchop TV guy. So perceptions matter. And I was always under the perception that people literally don't want to hear what I want to say. And I'm finally speaking out because I've been bottling it up for apparently 20 years and 5 months. But to go over here to prove the point that I can still come back over here, it's a mind mapping right now. It's called mind mapping. Where it's like, I went down this tunnel, but I left a clue like Red Riding Hood did because somebody thought of that idea. So you, therefore, can think of that idea as well and make that concept your own. And I, in my mind, playing in my own brain right now, just drop little clues of like conversation as to where I'm supposed to go. Because why do we write down notes? We write down notes. Like, I literally have this written out dozens of times in all of my notebooks in Tanzania. Why do we write notes? Why do we write notes? Why do we write notes? Why does Jason write notes? Why am I writing a note right now? Why am I writing about notes? And meta, and then come back to meta later. Because meta is everything. Everything's connected. When I say meta, I mean the universe, the God, the Allah, the whatever. It's like everything's connected at all times, and you live in abundance when you realize that massive resource power. It's literally insane. Like, you can't even comprehend it. That's why people have been confused about their existence their entire life. Sorry for discovering this at 20. Sorry, I've got literally the book and the secrets to happiness in the back of my mind, waiting to be told. Scared to even write it because intellectual property is a thing. And maybe not scared about it because I'm self-coaching myself right now, realizing I can share this with Blankenstein on a meta level. Because people also came up with the idea of the third person. So you can speak in the third person all the time and get away with it because you say, oh, I'm working on a novel right now. I'm kind of experimenting with the idea of a third person talking all the time. So anyways, to go down an entire another route, we're going to go back to Red Riding Hood's Clues and talk about, what was the cue again? I don't need it, because we were talking about weddings. We were talking about weddings.
So if that was hard to follow, I don't blame you. I think Mr. B was really struggling to keep track of all the topics we explored, because
Like, what if
in
I was
that
my own government? What if I was my own president of my own?
in that clip, we went through utopian governments, Wagnerianism, whatever that is, my boss / the wedding, how the brain works, Tony Robbins, people don't hear me, mind mapping, note taking, meta / God, existence, writing books, self-coaching, third person, and back to weddings. So I explored 14 topics in that short 4-minute clip, and I highlight it because I think it shows how pressured my speech was, how all over the place my thinking was, and also to highlight what Mr. B did. Some students just need someone who will listen, because I felt incredibly isolated during this period. I was posting and nobody was responding to my social media posts. I was alienating myself from my family. My sister had come down and I completely missed dinner because I was too busy with my thinking and my plans and scheming. And I was isolating myself from my friends, and people thought I was weird. And I just needed someone to talk to. And Mr. B was there for me. And I think he was concerned afterwards, but he also mentioned that, he thought this was a gift that I was able to go all over the place and come back to it. But in reality, I was severely ill. And that severe illness was caught once we finally met a professional. And it wasn't until I saw that professional that I was caught. There were 3 examples of well-meaning people that I just gave that were concerned, but didn't know what we were actually looking at. So it wasn't until I met Dr. Carrie Burness that I was diagnosed. And this was also a recorded meeting. I walked into his office, and before he came in, I put my phone underneath the table and hit record. So it's a cherished recording of this of mine, where I have over an hour of me basically talking out my problems. And my folks were there too, my parents, and they were concerned, and you can hear us kind of go back and forth in the recording. But it was basically me rambling for an hour plus. And Dr. Burns literally put down his notepad after 5 minutes of me talking, because he knew what I was within 5 minutes. It was that obvious to him, to a professional. I was rambling, I was going all over the place. I couldn't keep one thought straight. And he diagnosed me basically on the spot with bipolar 1 disorder. He didn't tell me outright because he knew I wouldn't have registered and I would have just gotten more mad. And he was trying to build a relationship between the two of us. But after the presentation, or after the session, he wanted a follow-up appointment with us, and my parents offered to drive me back to my house that I had moved into, but I said no, and I ended up walking the streets of downtown Lethbridge. And I also have a video of this because I was Snapchatting the entire time while I was on the streets. So I'd like to highlight once again my manic episode and show you what it really looked like, and maybe you can get a glimpse into what it may have seemed like to a stranger on the street. seeing me behave this way. So here's another video.
See this right there, my watotos, my kids. And if you don't understand why I'm calling you kids, keep thinking. It's literally why I'm doing all of this. I'm trying to be Jay Gamble, I'm trying to be Greg Wolcott, I'm trying to be me. And I just question things. I realized, because Spencer West told me, hey, guess what? Questioning things, you're pretty good at it. You know what, Mr. Blankenstein? Yeah, I went and talked to my grade 6 teacher. Whatever you want to call it, some force just drew us to each other. And I pulled over and I followed up and asked him, hey, Blankenstein, let's chat. I gotta go, but boom, boom. I showed him the real me, and he was so impressed. Because he's like, Jason, you're just being you. And I'm just being me, boo. Because there's nothing to be scared of. You don't have to say boo. You can just bask or run the frig away from me. Because my friends back in Tanzania, my watotos, my rafikis, they miss me, and I miss them a lot. I'm ready to show them that, hey, Lethbridge is... So anyways, yes, whoever the Saunders are that are driving past me right now, just wondering what the hell this kid is doing, walking in the circle. What's his movement pattern? Guess what? My movement pattern is completely erratic. There is no meaning. That's the point. Read Paul Auster. Question everything. Be okay with not being okay, and be okay with being crazy. Why does crazy have to be a bad word? I'm fucking crazy. I'd rather be crazy than lazy like everybody else. That's my message. Hey, I am showing you this awesome crosswalk that some people like to deface sometimes, because I want to show you that, hey, I care. I love you. I kapenda all of you. And yeah, these people are chuckling over here because they think I'm crazy talking to imaginary people from Snapchat. That's okay. Sonder on. Bye-bye. Kwaheri. Well, you know what I'm saying Kwaheri to? Kwaheri to the haters. Kwaheri to the people that don't want to listen to my message. Because I'm ready to speak to the minority. The niche that's going to make a difference.
So I just want you to imagine being that car that pulled up beside me and seeing me rant and rave and walking in a circle. And this is what mental illness looks like. This is what the severity of it was. I was completely on my own and walking the streets and just pacing back and forth, ranting into my phone. And it was highly erratic. And what happened next was I met a stranger on the street. I recognized him from my days at the university and bartending. I saw him around at the karaoke all the time, and he was a well-meaning fellow, but I got into his vehicle. He drove me to his house, and we smoked some of his marijuana, which he said was the best in the city. And I experienced psychosis right there on the spot with him. And it was incredibly scary because if you're not familiar with what psychosis is, it's basically a detachment from reality. And it's a side effect that can happen when smoking marijuana to some people with neurological dispositions like myself. And you don't really know if you could have psychosis unless you smoke the pot, and it happens. And it was really scary because I still remember the images to this day where it was like yellow and red, and Oprah was there, and what I thought Jesus looked like, and Tony Robbins, and it's just like this collection of people and our heroes, and in these colors, it was wild beyond belief. And thankfully, Tom, or the fellow that his name was Tom, was there. He drove me home and was good about it, and thankfully it was a well-meaning guy, and he didn't mean to hurt me or anything. He just had some powerful stuff that didn't sit well with me. So when I got home at my house there, I was highly emotional. It was right after the psychosis, and this is the last video I'll show, but it just highlights how up and down I could be in such a manner of moments. And I was for sure not sober because I just smoked that pot and gotten psychosis. But it's one more instance of what bipolar can look like.
Might as well do a nightly reflection because I feel like I'm in Tanzania. I feel like I'm in Arizona. I feel like I'm 100% sober. I'm just woke. Hashtag woke. Whatever hashtag you want, you silly watotos. And yeah, I'm talking about you adult a silly adult who just doesn't want to have fun. I was so scared tonight because I met a really, really cool guy who everybody's just didn't even want to talk to. Everybody's just a bully to this kid. Well, I'm sick of bullies. I'm not afraid to say it.
So essentially, there you're seeing the emotional roller coaster that it can be with bipolar, and that you can't really control your emotions, and you can be angry and fast talking one moment and then completely sad and destroyed in the next. So it wasn't long after I got diagnosed by Dr. Carey that I was sent to the hospital. My mom kind of tricked me into going into the ambulance one night when she asked me point blank, like, if you're so fine, if you're doing so well, if you're so superhuman, then see a doctor tonight and like prove that you're fine. And I took her up on that challenge and went on an ambulance ride to emergency, and I made a deal with the paramedics that they'd just let me out at the front and, you know, let me go home, but they lied to me, so I'd get in the van. And when I got there, the psychiatrist on call, he diagnosed me immediately within 2 minutes conversation. He knew what I was, severe manic episode. At this point, I had writing all over me. I was taking that vow of silence. I had writing on my shorts and on my legs and arms. I looked like a complete walking case study, really. And I refused the medication right away that the doctor in emergency pushed on me. And I would be in the hospital for 2 weeks until I took a trial to try to get out of the hospital. For 2 weeks, you're allowed to not take medication and apply for your freedom. And I lost my trial pretty like whole-handedly. It was unanimous. And that's when I started taking medication, was after I lost my trial. And it wasn't an instant fix. As soon as I started taking medication, I was still really up and down and off the walls, but I would I'd be in the hospital for 57 days total in the acute psychiatry ward of the Lethbridge Hospital. And I didn't really get better until towards the end, those last few weeks, and where I was allowed to go on home visits and reintegrate into society, and also take in some recreational therapy and group therapy. But my hospital stay wasn't a bad one. I had a really good team that was behind me, but it was chaotic to begin with because I was refusing medication. And I have all the memories of that hospital stay, and it was traumatic because being in the psychiatry ward for any length of time isn't fun by any means. And the people you see there, it's some troubling images for sure. But I got out of the hospital, but unfortunately I wasn't completely cured, and I'd have that depressive episode that I mentioned bipolar people suffer from. And so it was 7 months long of severe depression. This is like October 2017 now. And I was very lethargic. It was a feeling of down or low. So I wasn't up or energetic or rapid energy anymore. I was taking medication, of course, but it would take a lot of time with the medication, which I'll highlight in a second. And doing things for the first time was really hard. When I tried working for the first time, I was very tired. When I went to friends' houses, I was exhausted, and just doing anything for the first time at a hospital was just completely draining. And it was somewhat masked. Like, not everybody knew that I was depressed or had severe depression. So I wasn't like looking for sympathy or anything, but maybe just understanding. And a lot of people didn't have that. I had massive weight gain. I was 175 pounds in the hospital, and a year and a half later, I was 252 pounds. And back to the medication, it took 22 medication changes and adjustments before we got the medication right. And one note on medication is, I wonder if you can spot the difference here. On the left, you have heart medication, and on the right, you have my bipolar medication. I think these two should be looked at as equally respected, because I still don't understand why there's stigma attached to mental health, because he takes it for regulating his heart. I take mine for regulating my brain. It should be looked at as the same, I think. Now, like I said, it took 22 changes and adjustments before we got the medication right. And I did have side effects. I had, like I said, the weight gain. I had a chattering jaw like this. And I had emotional bluntness where I felt completely neutral for the entire time. And it was really, really hard because, when you don't feel happy or sad and you just feel neutral, it's just a gray world and it's miserable. So it took 10 months before we got the medication on the right there, where it was the correct mix. So when I was trying to get back to normal, I was going back to school and I struggled and it was really hard. And it wasn't really until Dr. Burness, my psychologist, and I came up with this idea of the Octagon of life, 8 areas of life to strategize for a holistic recovery. So today we're going to focus on the bolded, but I did want to highlight the 8 different areas that are really important for recovery for any kind of illness. So he says, this is Dr. Carey and I, exercise is crucial, paired with nutrition. That's kind of your physical body that's important. It's kind of building that foundation of recovery. And then there's cognitive therapy, which I'll go in depth on, and exposure therapy, which I'll also go in depth on. And then relationships are very important, having that support network, finding your significant other, having solid career foundations. I'm sure all of us here today that are teachers and student teachers, we're on the path of a great career that we're passionate about, but finding career passion is really important. Finances is also important. Like I said, I had manic debt, and getting rid of that and creating a solid financial plan was very important. And lastly, mental health balance, which for me looked like medication, but for other people may look like other things. So the first one is exposure therapy. And this is kind of the part of the presentation that I'll try to give you some things to take away for yourself and for students. But basically, exposure therapy is the opposite of shelving. If you've ever heard of the term shelving, it's kind of like, if you have an idea, just push it down, shelf it, sweep it under the rug, don't think about it. Like, now's not the time. And the thing with shelving and sweeping things under the rug is the rug eventually gets too clumpy and you trip over it, or the shelf gets too rickety and it falls over. Essentially, what exposure therapy does is it is a controlled way to feel your feelings and deal with your emotions. For me, this looked like my manic episode and going in depth on all my posts and my writings and my journals and my audio journals and everything, and just feeling my emotions, because I was really sad and was thinking about what other people must have thought about me during my manic episode and all the fallout and my depression and my weight gain and everything. And how I did exposure therapy was I just sat down and I read all my journals. I looked over it for a controlled hour a day until my feelings were neutral or feeling good about it. And it was hard because I had all the thoughts and feelings about inadequacy, and it was just baggage, essentially, that emotional baggage, because I was sad and mad, all of it. And telling my story and eventually coming out and speaking with people about my bipolar illness is what made it better. So how this could look is you could sit silently and just think about whatever thing is bugging you, or go through any triggers you have that could trigger your emotions, and just do it in a controlled setting for like an hour a day or 15 minutes, whatever like the severity of it is. And Dr. Burns does this strategy with all types of patients, whether it's bipolar or sexual assault or PTSD. It's one of his most effective techniques that he's shown me for dealing with any kind of trauma. So it's feeling your emotions, whether that's sad or mad. It's just going through them in a controlled way. The next one is cognitive therapy, and it's basically the limiting thoughts that plague you. They're cognitive distortions such as catastrophizing or personalization, etc., It's those thoughts that limit you and plague you in a sense. So how cognitive therapy works is there's a limiting thought. It's triggered by an event. So we'll use, I'll show you an example of how this may look in the middle school or high school setting. But the event triggers thoughts or cognitive distortions. There's a feeling that's associated with those thoughts or feelings. And then you have to dispute those thoughts and cognitive distortions to arrive at a new rational feeling. So the event here that I'm going to give is a middle school breakup, which can be very tragic for a student, right? It's their first love or whatever it is, and they may be feeling really sad and depressed even. And how they can start to think about that is just identify their thoughts, which may be, I'm no good, I'll be forever alone. This is called catastrophizing or personalization, where you're making the situation catastrophic, or you're making it very personal and thinking it's a personal attack when maybe it was just the people just grew apart, or just it wasn't working out for the other partner. And they arrive at probably, like I said, a depressed feeling. They may feel sad or worthless. And how you dispute these is the simplest way is either thinking silently about it and teaching students to, like I said, identify their feelings. And I think they need explicit instruction about this. So doing this yourself first may be the best way to go, and teaching them explicitly how to just think metacognitively about their thoughts, or journaling about it. You want to challenge the validity of these distortions. So writing out your thoughts and like, I feel worthless, I feel like I'll be all alone forever, and then critically analyzing these thoughts and challenging the validity of them. That is how you basically do cognitive therapy, and you change those thoughts into, I can learn from this, I will find someone new, and you just make it concrete in a journal. And obviously you wouldn't take this in for assessment, but it could be a journal activity that you do either one-on-one with a student or with a class, show the strategy and demonstrate that no thoughts are forever, and that you can change your thinking and think more positively about things. And that's essentially what cognitive therapy is, because after that you arrive at a new feeling better. And I did this with my manic episode and all the thoughts I had associated with it. And you want to start with exposure therapy and to identify those feelings, and then do cognitive therapy. So those are, so you're ready to move on. Those are the two concrete strategies that I'll give you. And the last one is just mental health balance. And for me, that looks like taking medication every day. And like I said before, there's no shame in taking medication in my mind. It should be looked at the same as taking heart medication. And you have to be patient with medication when it comes to mental health balance. It took me 10 months, basically a year, to get back to where I wanted to be. And for some people, it may not be taking medication. Mental health balance may mean self-care and managing stress and doing enjoyable activities, whether it's sports or listening to music. I like to listen to records. It's just doing enjoyable things to counteract any negative things that are going on in your world. So another key component of this is meditation, which can look at, I'm sure you can find many ways of doing it. I like diaphragmatic breathing, where you breathe through your stomach and do deep breathing that way. And it's managing stress and managing time, because those are kind of the two triggers for mental health balance that can throw everything off the wayside. So by doing enjoyable activities, practicing self-care, and potentially, if you have the neurological disposition that I have, it's taking medication. So those are the three areas I wanted to highlight today for the strategy component of my presentation: was exposure therapy, cognitive therapy, and mental health balance. For me, the strategy of the 8 looked like significant post-traumatic growth. It's growth after the trauma, keyword post. And I lost the weight. I lost over 50 pounds in a span of 6 months. I had no emotional baggage when it came to my manic episode. I erased all the debt I had by strategizing my finances. I know what to look for a relationship, which I'm still searching for, but I have clear relationship criteria. I know what I want. I've had 5 4.0 semesters in a row. And now I give presentations on my recovery. And as you've seen, it's been quite a journey from almost completely losing my mind to now doing very well in school. And I also wrote a book, which I'm trying to publish. It was a 6-month process, and the book is over, I think, 215, just at 215 pages. So it is a book, and it's my memoir on manic man, how to live successfully with a severe mental illness. And my doctor there, Dr. Burness, he co-wrote it with me. And yeah, now it's completed, it's polished, and we're just trying to find a home for it and trying to publish it. And lastly, I've been doing well in the Faculty of Education here at the University of Lethbridge. I did my PS1 in 2019 and did all of my electives in the last year. And I'm currently in PS2, our second professional semester. And I'm headed out to being a student teacher in March 8th. So I should be getting my placement any day now to find out what school I'll be at. So if I end up being at your school, don't be afraid to say hi. And I hope to get some feedback on this presentation. We arrive at the last slide, and this is where I just wanted to highlight the key understandings of today. So mental illness is super common. It can happen to anybody. Like I said, I was a normal kid with a positive upbringing. I played sports. I was taking 5 classes. I was doing very well, but it kind of, with the perfect storm of drugs and stress and being away from home in Africa and just my neurological disposition, I got the card that said you're bipolar, and it was a tough one, but we all play a part in combating the stigma. Like I said, medication should be looked at as not something that has stigma attached to it. It's what people need occasionally, and it can save lives like it saved mine. And we all play a role in combating that stigma. I hope you've been able to see through my artifacts and different videos and clips that what bipolar 1 and depression can look like. I stress that you need patience and recovery. Like I said, it took 22 different changes and adjustments before my medication was right, and about a year before I completely recovered. But that recovery was a holistic approach. Like I said, medication must be respected. You have to follow the experts' advice. Our doctors are working very hard to make us our best selves. And I also, in all those 8 areas, like, find the best trainer you can find the best nutritionist, find the best people and follow what they're doing, find the experts. And like I said, you need a holistic approach to recovery. That's why I had the eight different prongs of the Octagon of life. And it's okay to have a mental illness. I think I've hopefully demonstrated that it's all right to have a mental illness, and I don't struggle with mental illness anymore. I live with it. And I think that's something we have to change the rhetoric around. Like, people may struggle with mental illness, but eventually they learn to live with it. And I think we need to focus on people's resiliency factors. And we also need to be vulnerable. I hope I've demonstrated today that by being vulnerable, we kind of open the dialogue and have that conversation about mental illness and what it means to live with it. So I think our students would really benefit from us being open about our challenges and being vulnerable, and seeing or letting students know that it's okay to have a mental illness and that they can live a successful life with or without it. So now we arrive at the end of the presentation where I'll field any questions and answers and give you any answers. And just, yeah, what can I expand on for you? I've included the mental health helpline. So if you want to jot that down, it can be really helpful for when you're that teacher and you see that student and you need to call somebody because you've seen those warning signs that I hope I've highlighted today. And there's just my email in case you wanted to get in touch. So that is it for that. So at this point, I can field any questions, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to end it now. So thank you for listening to this presentation. I hope you have a great day.